Alright, greetings everyone. Here we are looking at yet another lesson on the hero's journey. I will try not to take too much time here, but this section is going to look at the next few steps of the journey. Last time we talked about essentially where the hero is in the beginning of the story and the world in which they inhabit. Like, is there a regular, ordinary world? I know in previous class we talked about, we looked at like Luke Skywalker, and we try to talk about how his ordinary world, even though it's in this fantastical universe, still has some relatability to our world today, right? Sits down, has dinner with his aunt and uncle, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so today we're going to look at the Call to Adventure, the Magical Talisman, Mentor, and the Special World. Now, there are videos attached to these slides, but of course I'm not going to play them here. So I've linked them into a folder. So if you go to your Hero's Journey folder, the yellow one, and you go to your assignment, inside the assignment there's a new folder marked Videos for Slideshow, and you'll find it in there. And I'll be uploading these slides hopefully by the end of this afternoon. All right, so without further ado, let's take a look. All right, so our essential question, according to Campbell's monomyth theory, how does the hero's journey begin? So something needs to happen to take the hero out of his or her ordinary world and transport them into the special world. Now, right off the bat, just because it's a special world doesn't mean it has to be something completely like some other dimension or something completely out of the realm of reality. It's special or unique because it's a reality that's new to him or her. Okay, so the call to adventure. So at some point, the hero is called to journey out of his ordinary or her ordinary world, right? I don't know how it says here. Sorry for the gender superiority here. At some point, the hero is called to leave his or her safe ordinary world and travel to parts unknown. The hero, however, does have a choice. They can refuse the call. Nevertheless, circumstances change the hero's decision, and the journey begins. Of course, if the hero continues to say no, you're not going to have much of a story, right? So at some point, they have to go on the journey. It's just that sometimes they're not exactly willing to run out and do it. Okay, so if you want, you can pause this and look at these two videos here, part 1 and part 2. And as you're watching this, I want you to think about, is there a call to adventure? Who makes the call? And does the hero accept? So in that folder, right, you'll find both parts of this video here. It should take you about 6-7 minutes to watch that whole thing. And then come back and we'll discuss it. Okay, so Frodo and Gandalf. So Gandalf, right, takes time to explain what the ring is, the ring that Bilbo Baggins had found during The Hobbit, or during that book, or eventually that film. And of course, Frodo equivocates on whether or not he should be the one to carry it. He finds all these different ways of trying to get rid of it, but eventually, right, Gandalf kind of tells him, yeah, you're the one kind of stuck with it. And as the story goes, the hobbits are essentially, it takes longer for the hobbits to be perverted or twisted by the ring, whereas someone like Gandalf is a major temptation to seize power. And this also happens for the journey, so it ends up being a responsibility that Frodo has to endure. All right, the magical talisman. I don't think every story you guys are going to look at has the magical talisman, though many of them do, right? And it's usually some kind of special weapon that helps them in their quest. And so a lot of times they're kind of handed down to them. So for example, here we have the story of King Arthur. So here we have a telling of where this sword comes from. In the next slide is Arthur pulling the sword, and of course this is going to mark him off. Well, you'll see what happens. So again, pause the video at this point, go back, watch the other two videos that correspond to this, and then come back for the discussion. Okay, so in the story, right, of King Arthur, the sword and the stone belongs to Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon. Arthur is actually whisked away from his family when he's born. This has to do with a deal between Merlin and Uther. Uther has Merlin perform a trick or an illusion in order for him to get something that he wants. So, in exchange, Merlin takes the child that's born from him. And this is what happens. He grows up with Sir Ector and Sir Kay, and then during one of the jousts, or during a tournament, he forgets to bring Sir Kay's sword, and then he inadvertently pulls the sword out the stone and becomes a true king. Oftentimes, the sword is, in the legends, it differs from version to version. It's a sword Excalibur. But most importantly, right, it's a sword here that is from the father. It does have some magical properties. For example, in the legend of King Arthur, the possession of the scabbard, that sheath that he puts the sword in, is supposed to protect him and keep him alive. So there's that. Okay, so the mentor, or the wise and helpful guide. Often the inexperienced hero finds that he or she cannot proceed without supernatural aid in the form of a wise guide who provides assistance. We see this all the time, whether it's Kung Fu Panda or Star Wars or Harry Potter. There's usually this older person that kind of guides the hero. Or the hero is a lot of times not aware of what his or her destiny should be. So oftentimes the mentor steps in and kind of guides them into that identity. So, for example, in the Karate Kid, right, he eventually meets up with Mr. Miyagi. This is the original Karate Kid. And to make a long story short, Daniel LaRusso is being picked on by bullies at his school. He's a new kid in town, and he keeps getting harassed by these guys. And so Mr. Miyagi kind of takes him under his wing to teach him how to defend himself, but he makes him do like these really mundane chores, waxing cars, painting fences, sanding floors, and all these terms come up: paint the fence, sand the floor, wax on, wax off. They're, at least for people my age, are very much in our vernacular. Maybe you see it parodied in other shows. But he does take on this role of guiding Daniel LaRusso in the film. So go ahead and watch this, and you can kind of see how this relationship works. Daniel's very ignorant and doesn't understand what Miyagi's having him do, and so this scene kind of helps Daniel understand the wisdom of his teacher. So go ahead and pause the video here. Go ahead and watch that particular video, the Mr. Miyagi one, and then come back here for more. All right, the special world crossing the threshold. So at some point, the hero is going to sort of literally walk through the door into this new world, right? We have to also keep in mind that while these films, the events are happening in the movie, there's usually a more deeper, maybe more spiritual or psychological meaning behind the adventures and trials, etc., that the hero faces. Okay? And the special world is where the hero is going to confront dangers, trials, probably make friends, where they're going to basically become the hero and mature. And so this is what this is all about. So when we look at a movie, even if it's something like, trying to find one that you guys aren't going to do, for example, King Arthur. Well, King Arthur always stays in Camelot, but his special world is leaving perhaps his job as a squire with Sir Ector and Sir Kay, and then becoming the king and going out and venturing and gathering knights and so forth. Or Sir Percival leaves Camelot and goes out in search of the Holy Grail. So, or in Indiana Jones, right? Indiana Jones leaves the United States, leaves his classroom, and journeys forth to parts unknown to find some kind of artifact. Okay, so here's this film Tron, and it's an old film. Some of these are very old, but he's essentially digitized into this digital world. So take a look at how this works, and take a look at immediately what happens once he ends up in the Tron world, the digital world. He's basically sucked into a computer. So go ahead and take a look at this, and come back, and we'll have our closing thoughts. Okay, so here we have Link about to prepare for his engagement with the special world, right? Of course, video games become much more sophisticated. Breath of the Wild is a good one. He kind of is awakened in his slumber and is simply on this plateau, and then eventually has to go and venture out into the overrun kingdom of Hyrule in search of the Princess Zelda and saving the kingdom. While the formula is always the same, it's the way it's been presented is different. And so we see this pop up in a lot of things, whether it's video games, comic books, movies, TV shows. This structure is kind of always present. So when you guys go to your slides, I want you to think about the questions that I ask on the slides and how your character interacts with all these things. Who offers him or her the call to adventure? How do they respond to that call? Are they ready to go? Or are they hesitant? Are they a little scared? That's why it's so important at the beginning we establish who the hero is. We understand and are able to describe him or her so that as they progress on this journey, then we can see how the experiences they have in this world shape them and bring them to a sense of maturity. Okay, everyone. So go ahead and make sure you begin working on that. We'll have class tomorrow, Wednesday, and we will discuss your projects in more depth. Excelsior. Have a good one. Take care.